Hello, Ronnie. We're here now in Rishikesh, no? One of the very special place in very sacred city beside the Ganga River. We are living in an ashram where it's quite easy finding interesting people. In that case, the fortune to know Ronnie Mool, which is a person that impressed me a lot because of the experience that you have to offer. No? This is why we decided that they enjoy with that experience, giving the possibility to other people to share and to learn about things. First of all, I would like to know a little bit. Tell us, no, which is exactly the experience that you have with these yatras, and what are you doing here?
Thanks, Jesus. And thanks for asking these questions. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you over some time. I know you're leaving soon, and we'll miss you around the ashram.
But we will continue in touch.
Yeah, we will indeed. So in July last year, I was in Dharamsala, and I walked into a bookshop, and I saw on the spine of a cover the word that caught my eye was Himalayan Master, and I had read the book here at Yogurikirtan called Living with the Himalayan Masters by Swami Rama, and I was very inspired by that book, and so the title caught my attention. The book happened to be apprenticed to a Himalayan master by Sri M, who's a spiritual teacher here in India. And so when I took the book down and I opened it up, at the very first chapter that I started looking at in the bookstore, it was about him as a 19-year-old walking from Rishikesh to Badrinath.
19-year-old.
He was 19 years of age. And, just glancing at the story, it was like a light came on for me. I just knew that this is what I needed to do. And it was one of those crazy thoughts, because where did that come from? That it was a thought that came from somewhere else. I had not been entertaining anything of the sort. Never thought about doing a yatra, which is a spiritual pilgrimage, walk in India. But I put the book back and managed to get a copy online, and then started reading this book. And again, this feeling of, I have to do this. But what was even more absurd about the sense of having to do this was that I knew that I wanted to walk the same way as the saints and rishis and gurus had done over the centuries. And that was with nothing, with very little. One change of clothing, no money, asking for food, sleeping at temples, sleeping on the banks of the Ganga. And I knew that was the way I wanted to do this. And that was even more absurd as a thought, because, the questions that came to my mind was, well, what about the language? I don't speak Hindi. What about hygiene? What about getting clean water? What about sanitation? All of these thoughts. But somehow I just surrendered to that idea, knowing that this is what I needed to do. And I left Dharamsala and came back to Rishikesh and started preparing for this first yatra of mine, which was to Badrinath. And
Badrinath should be sure that exactly, not the first one.
The first one was, I was very apprehensive. I was anxious but in an exciting, anxious kind of a way. It wasn't fearful, because I very soon and early on in the yatra, one thing major lesson that I learned was just to surrender. And so I completely surrendered to the divine help. And every morning I would wake and not know where I was going to eat that day and where I was going to lay my head to rest. So without surrendering, without handing over all the decisions to the divine, there's no ways that I would have been able to walk to Badrinath. Not at all. if I had been in charge, it would have been a mess. And so I've learned to let go of trying to be in control and trying to make the decisions to suit me. I've learned that I am not in control. There's a power that is far greater than all of us, who looks after the universe and does a very, very good job. And I don't need to try and be the managing director of the universe, because it's going to be a mess. And I learned that very much. So, what a lot of people have said to me is, but, why do you want to do that?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this.
Yeah.
Because imagine that for many people, the idea of one person that comes from South Africa, let everything aside coming here alone and working for days, and now we will talk us about more than days, no?
Right. Yeah. No.
Why? Most of the people will think this is a madman. Why? No? Maybe you can explain. No? Why? Which are the reasons?
Yeah. I go back to what felt almost like a calling for me. So that first yatra, not knowing what I was going to expect and what I might learn, or what transformational lessons might come my way, but the desire, the draw to do this came from somewhere else. It was not a decision that I felt I made. It was a decision that I felt was made for me. And so when I started that walk, as I said, I mentioned that the first thing I learned was that I just had to surrender on a daily basis. And then there were other really transformational experiences that I learned. I learned to be really mindful in terms of my walking, where I would place my feet. And in fact, on my second day of my first yatra, I actually had a fall and split my knee open to the point where I probably needed stitches in the knee. And that was just a message for me in terms of being mindful of where I place my feet and how I walk. I ended up not having stitches and dealing with it on my own, but that's another story for another time. And there were many of those. There were lots of little miracles that happened almost on a daily basis. In fact, always on a daily basis. And often they were small. It was a small encounter that I would have with someone that would be really meaningful. It would be a 30-second conversation that could change my direction, maybe point out to me that there's a shortcut that takes you in this way, and it's going to save you 1 or 2 kilometers. Little things that happened like that.
Just the reason you are saying is, especially this question, no? Why? Is getting knowledge. The main reason is getting knowledge.
Thank you. The real reason for me is to really wake up. And when I say wake up, is to realize my true nature. I've learned being in India that the path of self-realization is really the only path, and it's become the only path for me to embark on and follow, is to wake up to who I truly am. And I knew that doing a yatra of the sort that I did was going to be serious spiritual practice, serious sadhana. And many people have said that to me, is that, that is very serious and austere way of waking up, learning more about yourself, being more mindful, surrendering and dropping the ego, really becoming humble and embracing one's humility, because at times to not have food and to be at a temple where you are almost open hands and sometimes it's not forthcoming, that's a humbling experience. That's not an easy thing to do. And so those were many of the lessons. It was just, and that continue to be learnings for me, is that whole process of realizing my true self and my true nature. And I have, since doing that first journey to Badrinath, which is a holy temple in the Himalayas,
You did few.
Yeah, I did. And so then I walked to Kedarnath, which is again one Char Dham temples, of which there are 4 in the Himalayas: Badrinath, Kedarnath, Gangotri and Yamunotri. And so I walked to Badrinath and Kedarnath, and then this year in May I walked to Dwarahat, which is where Mahavatar Babaji's cave is, and just a very spiritual center, a very charged environment spiritually. And then I just recently walked to Yamunotri, and then I have a big yatra planned.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to ask you now. Now that told us a little bit, because this is the more crazy of all of them.
Certainly it is. So again,
it's an experience.
Yeah,
sure.
Very much so. So there's what is known in India as the Narmada Parikrama, and the Narmada is a river that flows from east to west. It's the only east to west flowing river in India. It's the 5th largest river in India, and from its source to the Arabian Sea. So it starts at a place called Amarkantak, and the source is in Bharuch, which is in Gujarat, at the Arabian Sea, and that distance is about 1,300 kilometers. And so the idea is that you start anywhere along the river, but the Narmada has called me to start at her source. And they say that the Narmada calls you. If you are listening, she will guide you and protect you and tell you what you should be doing. And the Narmada has called me. And again, a story for another time in terms of how that came about. But she has very clearly said to me that I need to start my yatra in Amarkantak, walk to Bharuch, 1,300 kilometers. I cannot exactly walk next to the banks of the river all the way, so I'm going to walk a little further probably, and then cross over at the ocean, and then walk all the way back to Amarkantak. So I'm going to walk about 2,800 kilometers at the end of the.
How long?
It's going to be about 5 or 6 months of walking 20 kilometers a day, without knowing where I'm going to be, where I'm going to sleep, where I'm going to eat.
You haven't been never?
And I've seen the Narmada, but it's new territory for me, and the whole experience is going to be
sure.
So
it sounds quite exciting, no? And you're sure that you will one experience like this, sure that will change anyone that does something like that.
Yeah. No, there's no question about it that it's going to be a transformational experience, and I hope that along the way that I wake up a little more than I am awake right now. I consider myself to be reasonably mindful and reasonably awake spiritually, but I think that the Narmada is hopefully going to take that entire transformational experience much deeper. I have no expectations as to what might happen, but I certainly, there's a part of me that prays that might be the case.
You know that you are going to do something special.
It's going
hard.
to be.
Sure,
it's going
that
to
sounds hard too.
Yes,
no?
it is going to be. And the intention is for me to actually record some of that experience and probably put it onto YouTube, and this might end up being there as well. So hopefully in time people will be able to walk alongside me, if not in physical form, virtually, and be part of the journey.
Sharing and
so to share that, I've been astounded at how many people have said, this is such an inspirational thing you're doing, and I don't, for me, sharing it is not about, there are no conditions attached to that. I'm not trying to inspire anyone. If people are uplifted and inspired by that, that's a real bonus. That's wonderful. If one person, just as a result of something that I've shared, feels that they want to do something that's going to change their lives for the better, that's a wonderful reward.
Sure.
For me. So
we will let know something that is quite strange now for more of us. I only want to say, the pleasure that it's been for me, and how fortunate I feel for stay that time together, and I think that make a nice friendship that I hope
Very much.
that we will continue feeding.
Very much. Thank you, Alexis. Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.